National Online Forum. We are so thrilled to have you today. For those of you who don't know, Voices Against Trafficking is an online, is a nonprofit organization, and we help victims of human trafficking, sexual exploitation, men, women, children who are hurt by this, by creating a collective voice, because together we're more powerful. But before we get going, I want to thank all of you who are here watching and listening. I want to thank our charter members and our charter media members, because without them, we can't do all the things that we do. As a survivor myself of sex trafficking for 17 years, this is a passion project for me. Voices Against Trafficking gives us the opportunity to collectively do more good for the victims and to put the predators at bay. So we're thankful you're here to watch our program today. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, and you're going to get so much information, and I hope that you'll be inspired to action as well. So for more information about Voices Against Trafficking, go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. voicesagainsttrafficking.com. There are helplines, there are hotlines, and there's more information about what we do as a group. So if you're ready, I'm going to introduce you to our amazing moderator today, the Honorable Blanquita Cullum. We call her BQ for short, and she's going to get us going on our program. So sit back, and here we go.
I'm ready, Andy, and this is going to be a great program. We thank you so much. Andy Berger, our powerful founder and Voices Against Trafficking leader, and also you founded Viewless Place. Andy, as she mentioned, is a survivor, author, advocate, and her personal painful journey and work has saved countless lives. She's the motivation on a quest for more voices to join the fight against 21st century slavery. It reminds me of a quote from our charter member, Kathy Haddam. This is what she said: "One voice has tremendous power, but when voices unite collectively to combat human trafficking and sexual exploitation, an unstoppable movement is born." So for all of you joining our conference from all over the world, Voices Against Trafficking welcomes you. And we have some very powerful voices for you today. Let's get started. We welcome Dr. John DePaula. Dr. John DePaula is a longtime orthopedic surgeon, married with 4 big kids. His commitment to combating human trafficking and fighting for human rights are the issues that sealed his decision to run for Congress in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. Dr. DePaula and his wife, Lori, are our first platinum members of Voices Against Trafficking, and they are receiving distinction for their commitment to ending human trafficking in the U.S. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, Dr. DePaula, and we welcome you. And I think, there we go. Doctor, we want to hear you speak. And we're going to ask Dr.
Hold on a second. I got him. Here we go. He's
There we
unmuted
go.
now. There you go, Dr. DePaula.
I just want to say thank you for including me in this discussion. And one of the things that compelled me to get involved was meeting Andy and her husband, Ed, hearing their story and all of the good work that they've done, and reading her books and being educated about really what a problem trafficking and sex exploitation is in our country. I was never aware. I have 4 children. I have 3 grandchildren. And just hearing what is going on out there was very terrifying. I'm running for the U.S. Congress. I'm not a politician. I have never wanted to be a politician. But one of the things that prompted me to action was that I feel I benefited, and many of us benefited, by what I call the American franchise, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, protected by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, in a country where each citizen gets 1 vote. And I feel that learning what's happening out there has convinced me that that franchise is being attacked and destroyed. And so I had to stand up, and I decided to run for the US Congress. Sexuality is a gift. It's the one thing that allows us the privilege to participate in creation. Sex trafficking violates that gift in the most tragic and evil way. And the children that become engaged in this, and women, they are denied the American franchise. I think the solution to all of this is to educate the public. And I think it's a misdirected policy that currently our children are routinely indoctrinated into alternative sexual lifestyles, such as LGBTQ trans. And I looked this up, and only 5.6% of the population becomes a part of this group. And so why are all of our children being compelled to make a decision about something that very few people actually decide to do? Now, I don't think that any American citizen, no matter what their sexual orientation is, should be denied the American franchise. But I also don't believe this should be pushed on our children as something that the nation has to turn towards the children and helping them to identify situations in which they may be at risk. Their parents need to know what those situations look like and what kind of behaviors are going on around their children that may place them at risk. Teachers and law enforcement need to understand what these signals are so that they can use their positions to prevent it. And one of the big things that I think I will be pursuing when I go to the US Congress is to restore the security of our border, where much of this activity occurs. And then it comes up our highways. In my state, it comes up I-5 and Route 97. People are being trafficked every day into our communities. And the people that run the trafficking businesses are now coming up and establishing their activities in our own communities and placing our children at rest. This is a very key issue for me. I'll pursue it strongly when I go to Congress, and I'll make sure that I'm another strong voice against trafficking when I get there.
Well, thank you, Dr. John DePaula, for your words and for your perspective. We always like to hear from folks in the federal government and what they're doing as well. And that's why it's a great pleasure to have the honor to introduce you to Laura Joyner. Laura is a senior inspector with the United States Marshal Services, their missing child unit. Her prestigious career with the Marshal Service began in 2009 at the DC Superior Court. She has served as a senior inspector with the Judicial Security Division, and there, Laura taught judicial officials worldwide how best to protect themselves and their families. We're very excited to hear what she has to say. Laura, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Normally I give presentations and they're at least an hour long. So this is going to be a very high level overview of what we at the U.S. Marshal Service can do to help support the missing child program that we have. I always start the presentation with the phrase, "We hunt good people just as well as we hunt bad people." One of our former directors used that phrase in a presentation because most people know us for fugitive investigations where people have a warrant and we're knocking on their door at 3 a.m. and making the arrest. And so we have now been given authority to utilize those skills to help find missing children. That started in 2015 with the Juvenile Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act. And that allowed the Marshal Service to recover what we have called critically missing children. Prior to the JVTA, we could only support cases where there was a fugitive nexus. If maybe someone that had abducted that child had a felony warrant, then we were able to support those cases. I will say that this mission for us is an unfunded and unmandated mission. So we are not required to support these cases, but it's something that at least our unit and many people in the agency are very passionate about. And if we have the resources, we definitely want to participate and support our state and local partners in recovering missing children. So the JVTA does give us the discretion to say yes or no to a case. Again, we don't like saying no, but sometimes we have all of our other missions, whether it's court or warrants or protecting the judiciary, and we have to say no. But we definitely want people to continue coming back to us and keep asking us for help. We can support as I mentioned, state and locals, whether or not it's finding the actual missing child or finding people that they may be associated with. And we have a lot of resources that a lot of agencies don't have. And so we are definitely a good resource for them. There are a few things that we are not able to do, though. We cannot join any task forces. We can't sign any MOUs. And there are a lot of other things that when we talk to the state and local partners, we tell them what we can and can't do. But I don't need to go into detail about that now. I work very closely with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I'm actually the Marshal Service liaison. So once life gets back to normal, I will be sitting at their offices. I should have been the last 2 years, but everyone's remote. And so I have a few stats that they use. So last year in 2021, there were over 337 missing child entries into NCIC, which is the Nation Crime Information Center. And that's anytime a child goes missing, law enforcement is supposed to enter them into that system. So that's a lot of missing child entries. The majority of these cases are endangered runaways. And a lot of times the endangered runaways, they run away more than one time, even after they're recovered. And statistically speaking, the more times you run away, the more likely you are to be a victim of trafficking. Because at a certain point, they don't have any other means besides their body to be able to survive. In terms of our numbers, we started in 2015, and just looking at them in our fiscal year 16, we were at 173 recoveries. And then last year we went to 950. So our fiscal year starts October 1st. Since October 1st, we are already at 223 recovered missing children. We work one-off cases, and then we also have a lot of operations where we do a coordinated effort, and we dedicate maybe a week or a couple of days to simply recovering the missing children. And so that's where we've been all over the media. It's during those missing child operations where we're dedicating all of our resources to the mission. I guess I would love to ask anyone that works with law enforcement, or if there's any law enforcement listening, please reach out to us if you need assistance on any missing child cases. We do have requirements where the child has to be listed as missing in NCIC. It has to meet some criteria in order for us to be able to support it, whether or not it's a fugitive nexus or the child has to be what we call a critically missing child, where they have certain risk factors that make it so that we use our resources to help support them. And if anyone is interested in getting Marshal Service support, you can go to our public website, www.usmarshals.gov. And there's a forms section on the far left, and you can find a form to reach out and request help. And that'll go to our general mailbox. And then we can farm that out to the appropriate district across the US. And again, one thing I forgot to mention is the benefit of utilizing Marshal Service support is that we are all over the entire United States. So if a child goes missing in Connecticut and then there's reason to believe that they're in Texas, we have offices in Texas all over. There's 94 different districts that we can reach out to work together and to recover the missing children.
Well, Laura, that is great news. We thank you so much for that. We're glad you're all over the place. Senior Inspector with the United States Marshals Service, that missing child unit. God bless you. We just want you to be more successful than ever. We have another dynamic person that's going to be joining us right now, Danielle Freitag. And let me tell you about Danielle. She's a counselor, overcomer, the co-founder of Action 169, a nonprofit committed to addressing commercial sexual exploitation and problematic substance use. And it's done through faith-based prevention, intervention, and holistic restoration care services. It's very successful, and I'm excited because she's going to tell us more about Action 169. Danielle, welcome and join us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. Just really an honor to be on here with so many of you who are on the front lines, really, of being a part of the solution towards addressing exploitation and trafficking. And as I was preparing for this, I had a story really come to mind that I wanted to share and start out with. In 2018, I had the opportunity to be at one of the only accredited safe homes in South Africa, actually, that provided services for teens, young girls coming out of sex trafficking. And I was there to help provide restorative services and offer some consulting. And one of the courses or classes, if you will, that we did was on the power of dance. And these young girls had an opportunity to really connect their bodies with innocence, to dance before violation or betrayal, really connect themselves with their bodies, and did that through dance. And so it was a very memorable experience. I remember seeing them just experiencing joy and just having an opportunity to heal from the trauma that happened from sex trafficking. And that actually reminded me of just going back to a part of my story. And I'm only going to share really just very briefly. But I was actually not kidnapped. I was groomed and brought into the strip club industry. And it was from there, in that environment, that there was addiction, drug and alcohol addiction, and everything else that came along with the lifestyle of being in the commercial sex industry. And now, Laura, please correct me after if I'm wrong, but I believe this stat to be true is that less than 5%. And this is actually according to the center, same organization, Center for Missing and Exploited Children, is that less than 5% of trafficking cases happen through abduction. But it's so necessary, right, that we're on the front lines, you're on the front lines to address those cases where there has been abduction, but then also talking about grooming. It's so important that we are talking about how this happens. So yes, there's abduction. We know that. My story, I was groomed, and that happens to be the story for many overcomers of exploitation, is that there are grooming tactics. So someone is befriended, maybe it's happening online, social media, Instagram, Facebook Messenger. So there's a whole process of targeting a victim with vulnerabilities and promising something and then bringing them into whether it be commercial sex industry or sex trafficking. And so for me, for those that we actually get the privilege and opportunity to work with, we are providing restorative services, but we're doing it more through creative dance and through artistic ways. And again, this is why. And I want to share a quote with you. This is by Dr. David Allender. I just love this quote. And this is he says, well, if you are involved in addressing victims of sexual abuse, and that would be sex trafficking, they need movement. They literally need to dance. So they need to have their bodies returned to them by an acknowledgement of the fact that we are muscles, bones, and movement. What evil wishes to do through the experience of betrayal is to turn you against your body, and through powerlessness, take away your effectiveness in this world and ultimately bring shame to your body. And so this is, again, why I want to go back to just the significance of restoration through the arts, whether it be creating or dance, whatever it might be. And so that's what we do here at Action 169. A part of our restorative programming is to offer those opportunities for teens, but also women 18 and up coming out of the commercial sex industry. So there's always so much that we can do. And those that are listening, I just want to encourage that there is always something you can do, whether it be supporting organizations that are on the front lines, prayer, or even now as you're listening, you're getting equipped by those that are on the front lines. And so thank you again for having me.
Danielle, powerful words. And it is important for us to be able to find some way for people to be able to deal with all of the brutality and the predators that are trying to groom our kids. Very fitting that we have such an interesting guy for you coming up now. Hunter Allen, Hunter Allen is a Krav Maga master instructor and TIG founder. You bet, that's right. He's a master instructor and bodyguard. What a guy. He believes that no one should ever become the victim of a violent, physical, or armed confrontation. TIG offers proper and effective reality-based self-defense training, including, get this, Israeli Krav Maga. TIG Tactical donates thousands of dollars in free self-defense classes to recent survivors of sex trafficking and domestic violence. And so we're very, very proud to have Hunter Allen joining us. Hunter, we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I also want to thank you for all that you're doing to make people aware of such a horrific reality that so many people face daily. My story is a little bit different. I started off at a very young age. I was adopted to an abusive household. I was raped, I was molested, I was beaten, and for years, mental, physical anguish. I chose a different path for myself. At age 11, I started training in martial arts. This is my 50th year in martial arts. It's what I do best in this world. I want to empower people so they can actually defend themselves against violent attackers. And it sounds like you have to become very proactive, but you do. You cannot choose when violence finds you. You cannot choose when somebody looks at you, whether they want to kidnap you, take you, rape you, rob you, sell you, because there's a lot of money in what this obviously does, but you can choose the outcome. I empower people to fight back. The only way to beat violence, and it sounds kind of sad, is with the bigger form of violence. I give you controlled violence. So I take my students, new or whether they have experience or not, we go to the roof. Anybody can start you at square one and say you have to start at A to go to B. I don't believe in that. I start you at T, then bring you to C, then we go to Z, then we go to W, and we bounce all around the board. Violence is, it's violent. People are armed, they're dangerous, they're scary, there's usually multiple attackers. You have to be able to defend yourself instantly, effectively, but most of all, safely to live to see another day. When I started Take Tactical, that was my vision. Empower people so they could defend themselves against any threat, anywhere, anytime. Is it easy? It really is. It's in your mind. If you fall victim, you're a victim. When I work with survivors, whether domestic violence, sex trafficking, or anything else out there, they are a survivor. They're not a victim in my mind. Victim mentality stays a victim mentality. So many people will tell them there's resources. We can buy you a sandwich and talk to you and counsel you. But in reality, they stay the same place they were forever. They're a victim in their own mind. They're embarrassed, they're ashamed, they're afraid, they don't feel empowered. People that do the trafficking and abuse of any sort, they intimidate. And they know that intimidation works for them. They're scary. They talk people down. They make them feel worthless about themselves. We change that at Take Tactical. We let you know that you are empowered. You're a wonderful person inside. You have the strength to be your own warrior. And you actually have to be. This is my calling from God. It's what I do best in this world. Some of the clips that you're seeing right now, we shot the other day. Just different forms of violence that can come out of anywhere. A restaurant, a shopping center, a carjacking attempt. Carjacking is big. Here in Oregon, we have a big problem with human trafficking of all sorts. Yet it's kind of swept under the rug, sadly. There's a lot of money in Central Oregon. There's a lot of real estate in Central Oregon. And I think that's taking precedence over the brutal reality that so many people face. We want to change it. We also offer, for any recent victim of any kind of violence, I will train them for free. I've always done this. I always will do this. We are in Oregon. They'd have to come to me. But I'm available 24/7 to travel the country, protect people, empower people, teach organizations, teach them what they need to do so they can take care of their own self. We are our own first responder. You can't depend on 911. You can't, and it's sad, our law enforcement, God bless them, I work with them quite often, they do the best they can. But a phone call is a phone call, and it's still 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes away. Violence happens in a split second. The average person, it takes them about 2.5 seconds for their brain to realize what their eyes just saw. I train all my students to be under the 2-second mark, start to finish. So it's a little bit different way to look at it. So many people do other things. It's beautiful. Everybody's coming together to help. But I take it to the actual, this is the violence that people face. And what do you do? There's no other way to put it. It's violent out there, it's crazy out there, it's brutal out there, and these criminals, these stalkers, these predators, they want to intimidate, they want to take advantage. Young kids are being groomed actually to fall prey to this, but there's victims at all ages and survivors at all ages, 8 to 80. They don't care. If they can intimidate and they can hurt and they can abuse, they do it. I want people to think differently about themselves. They deserve to be in a better place, but sometimes the only place we can go to is by putting ourselves there and not depend on anybody else. We try to help. We do the best we can, but we're always available to work with any organization or any teaching crew that wants to get out there to help. I will travel, I will go, I will do. And I think that's what we all have to do, is come together to bring awareness, but to also empower people. Talk is cheap, you know what I mean? So it's just a different way to think.
And it's a great way to think. I got to tell you, we're proud of powerful guys like you, Hunter, and what you've been doing to try to help people to be able to take control of their lives again, and all the work and the thousands of dollars you've donated is very, very important. We're excited. Thank you, Hunter. We're very proud of you. Right now, we're happy to introduce you to someone that is kind of young. She is very spectacular. She was a contestant in the Miss Alabama pageant, and she is definitely dedicated to the issues of human rights. I'm talking about Taylor Blatchford. And part of her focus is on the issue of trafficking and dignity, which she does take very seriously. Her platforms are Text to Regret and cyber civics, and teaching middle school children about internet safety. She's getting her master's degree in public relations from the University of Alabama. And you bet we're delighted to bring forward for you Taylor Blatchford and let you hear what she has to say. Taylor?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak at this forum today. It is an absolute honor. I am the founder of online campaign Text to Regret, and I'm a student at the University of Alabama, as just mentioned. And I am currently working with a national organization named Cyber Civics that provides internet safety curriculum to students nationwide. And I'm currently speaking to civic organizations in the state of Alabama to raise funds for that curriculum to be donated to middle schools here in Alabama. And it's been very successful so far. I'm proud to say that I've raised enough money for about 25 curriculums. And now I'm finding middle schools to donate that curriculum to. Usually when I speak to these civic organizations, there are 3 main points that I give, and those are the same 3 points that I want to talk about today. The first is the issue of funding that goes towards internet safety education. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of research about internet safety funding and what goes towards that issue at this point in time. In fact, I read a statistic a couple months ago that in 2019, over $5 billion was spent raising money for improving school Wi-Fi networks, which is great in this day and age, especially when technology is being used in the classroom even more. But there is really no point in spending that kind of money if we are not also going to teach students how to behave online and give them those tools. The second point I always bring up is the necessary improvements needed to internet safety legislation. I'm sure a lot of you in this forum already know this, but COPA and SIPA laws have not been updated in almost a decade. And just to give you some perspective on that number, almost 10 years ago, I was 12 years old. And in that decade alone, so much time has passed and the internet has evolved tenfold. And the means of which the internet is being used for human trafficking has evolved immensely as well. So the fact that there hasn't been the necessary improvement to this legislation is something that needs to be addressed and hopefully improved on in the near future. The last point is probably the most tangible point, and that is addressing parents and adults in general about the relationship they have with the children in their lives regarding internet safety. Because the unfortunate reality is that most parents, most adults, are afraid of having these conversations with their children. I read a really jarring statistic that noted parents spend less than 46 minutes on average throughout their entire child's life talking about internet safety with them. And when I read a statistic like that, it's really easy for me personally to connect that back to some of the issues that stem from a lack of internet safety education, such as human trafficking and students not being equipped with the tools to recognize the red flags online and be able to defend themselves in an appropriate way. So it all comes back to having those conversations with kids. And I know a lot of people listening to this forum today have kids of their own, grandkids, or they mentor youth in some way. And if you went home and you talked to your kids that you have in your life today, you would probably be spending more time talking to them about this issue than most adults do throughout their entire child's life. So it's just important to open up those conversations and let them know that you are on your side. And I think all three of these points ultimately go back to the issue of human trafficking and how it correlates with internet safety education. Because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, look at internet safety education as an isolated issue. And they think, okay, internet safety education just is what it is by itself. But the reality is that so many other issues stem from it, human trafficking being one of them. I would like to think that if there is more internet safety education and more attention put forth towards educating these kids about how to stay safe online, this would not be as prevalent as an issue as it unfortunately is. And I really think that Text to Regret, Cyber Civics, and other internet safety organizations can make a big difference on that path. In conclusion, I think this all goes back to a really cool quote I actually read in the Voices Against Trafficking book in the social media chapter, and it states that the ability to access a vast array of kids through the internet has become easier and easier as social media platforms become more popular and attractive to younger audiences. This absolutely could not be more true, and it goes to show that social media and the internet will forever play a part in the role of human trafficking and how that is performing in our society. And we need to address that issue head on.
Wow. Well, you hit that one spot on, Taylor. And we thank you so much. You know, we also thank you for reading the book. We're very Voices Against Trafficking. And we're also inspired that it's now in the Library of Congress. So we're very excited about that too. But we'll be also introducing later in the program a person we hope you're going to get to be very good friends with. And that's Kathy Haddam with Enough is Enough, Taylor. But you had some very inspirational words, and thank you. You know, the power of communication is so significant in what we see on television, media, online, in all capacities. And that's why we're very intrigued and excited about this person we're going to introduce you to, Donovan Vaughn, because Donovan is the producer and the director of Darkroom Productions. He is originally from South Africa, and his wife, and he came to the United States, I think like 22 years ago, and began their family. But he's been involved in film production for over 25 years. And we're very proud to announce that he's filming a documentary series on human trafficking and the adverse effects it has on all of us. So Donovan, we are anxious to hear from you and to find out what you can tell us about your powerful new series.
Yeah, well, thank you, BQ. So we, like BQ was saying, I mean, I've been involved in production for many years, and I mean, I've done things for churches, nonprofits and other kind of corporate events, and I've always been wanting to sink my teeth into something that really matters. I kind of felt like there was just something more that I could do, and I was, I've been like kind of soul searching and things like that. And then strangely enough, like months ago I was watching this one movie, and some of you may know, with Liam Neeson, called Taken. And the one thing was about, it exposed, it portrayed this whole trafficking thing. And I was like, I thought to myself, this is horrendous. This is terrible that this stuff is actually going on. And then I got to sit down a coffee with a friend of mine, and I said to him, I really feel like I want to make more of a difference. I want to do something. I want to capture something that is really the story needs to be told. And we were just going back and forth, and he said to me, well, what about the human trafficking element? What about what that's going on? That's horrendous. And inside of me, I just knew, okay, I need to go after this. And I talked to my wife, and it took a little bit of convincing, because obviously, with the whole, stigma, attached to it and what could happen. And we have actually formed 21st century slavery, and we are going to be, like BK was saying, we're going to be doing a documentary series. And I felt like I wanted to do something that it wasn't just one documentary. It wasn't just something that stopped. We want to continue it. We want to tell the story and keep on telling the story. We want to cover all these different aspects of it, because if you guys probably know this, well, some of you, that 17,000 missing people in America, in America today, and it's just horrendous. The kind of things that what goes on, and Hunter Allen, the gentleman who spoke just a little while ago as well from TIG Tactical, we've also partnered with him as well, because he really has a heart, for what's going on in this arena. And we're going to be connecting the dots, like with the prostitution, with abortion, with homelessness, how all these things correlate to human trafficking, talking to the police, getting the police involved. And we just see that there is such a need to tell the story. And we've been onto the streets. We've already done interviews on the streets, and our first episode is actually going to be coming out probably in the next week. And it's so interesting how some people, they don't actually want to believe that this is a problem. And the district attorney in our city right over here, he will not go along. He will say, no, this isn't an issue. And differences of opinion, could be that, is it going to impact tourism? Is that the reason that he's saying this? We can't point fingers, but why the people, even on the street, some of the people are like, no, there aren't any issues, and then others are just horrified. The one gentleman, he was saying that he doesn't let his daughter out of his sight, and he doesn't know what he's going to be doing, moving ahead. And so these are the kind of things that we, like the interviews have been really powerful about, even like stores next door, or like a so-called massage parlor, what's going on next door. We spoke to a lady, we interviewed her, and she was telling us about these horrendous things that were going on. And this is right here in the city that we live. And so we just want to, using this documentary series, tell the story from month to month, going to capture this footage, working with Andy. She's been so awesome. We love working with her, getting her on camera as well. It's just been terrific. She's just a wealth of knowledge, and she steers us in these different directions. And so it's just awesome. And it's sad, and it's great at the same time, because we want to make a difference. We want to expose what is out there, and we want to educate people as well, not just showing them, the horrors of it, but educating people and showing them what they can do and how they can move ahead, how they can move forward.
Well, Donovan, it just sounds powerful. We can't wait for the series to get started, for all of us to be able to view it. And you are making a difference. And Voices Against Trafficking is very grateful to you, and for the work that you and your wife are doing on behalf of all those people that don't have a voice. We thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
And we are also delighted to have another great friend of Voices Against Trafficking joining us. He's quite an interesting man. I'm talking about retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, Tony Schaefer, Senior Fellow and the President of the London Center for Policy Research. What a life this guy's had. He's been a CIA-trained intelligence operations officer with over 35 years of experience in global and national security. And Colonel Schaefer is the creator and producer for National Geographic's great series called The Chain of Command. And he's a New York Times best-selling author, and we love his books. But more than anything, he's a great friend to us at Voices Against Trafficking, and we're so honored to have him join us today. And of course, that's time for you now, Tony, to share with us your words on what we need to be doing.
Well, Blakita, thank you. I'm honored to be here and participate in this, and I appreciate you and Andy's hard work in bringing this all together. As someone who's had a fairly extensive background doing interesting things, one of the things I had completely missed my entire career is the issue of trafficking. One of the things I think is most important about your effort is making the invisible visible. That is to say that so much of this happens right under our nose every day. And as much as I spend a lot of time overseas working very difficult, challenging issues, I learned about 10 years ago how severe and extensive the human trafficking issue is. So your effort is key and critical to helping people understand that this is real, it's in front of us, and we all are obligated to do something to help identify these sorts of things. So there's a lot of challenges to what you're doing, what we're doing. First off, there's huge economic incentives for this sort of thing to happen right now. We're talking about, obviously, the southwest border. I think that only enhances the likelihood of individuals being trafficked across the border, individuals who are then exploited sexually for horrific issues that sometimes goes on for years or decades. These victims are, again, invisible for the most part. And we're talking about adults as well as children. And this is something that I've spoken with Andy about before on our own Thought to Action podcast. We went through this. It's horrific, the fact that we don't have a more cohesive and effective effort to establish a path to rescuing people. And that's one of the things that I'd like to see us do a lot more of. And also to look at the economics of this. We've learned over the past couple of years, some very, very severe players, very influential players are involved in this. And that's what the other thing we must do is have the courage to go forward, to call this out, no matter where we see it happening. We're talking about senior political officials. We're talking about senior entertainment officials. This is something that we cannot sit back and hope for the best. We have to take action. And that's where I'd like to see our alliance work more readily to actually go out, identify this sort of thing, hold those people accountable, and make sure that by holding them accountable, we can destroy the networks. And that brings me to my next point. We're talking about horrific human rights violations. We're talking about international borders. We're talking about economic benefit of these traffickers. This brings me to my conclusive point. This is all about national security. As a national security think tank, we'll examine the full spectrum of issues that affect our political system and national security system. And this is one of them. It's interesting that we have so many cartels engaged in drugs and moving drugs. I think many of these cartels, Blankita, figured out trafficking is the higher percentage benefit. You don't just take an item and sell it once. You take an item, you move it, and you sell it over and over again. And those items, by the way, the trafficked individuals, children and adults, are often used in what we call brownstoning. Brownstoning, especially, is that which is done to political figures, influential members of business, where they're tricked into, I'm sure that they're willing to do it, obviously, but they're tricked into having sex with an underage child, and that is then used as blackmail. That is clearly classic tradecraft from the left, from a number of foreign countries, and this is used more routinely than people understand. People are targeted by this all the time, and that becomes a national security issue because if you can compromise a politician, a business member, any number of things, you've done a great deal of damage to our national security. And this has happened. It is going to be something I think we're going to hear a lot more about. We're already seeing kind of traces of this with some of the current media about certain hard drives, which I don't want to get into here, but I'll be more than happy to talk about it sometime down the road. So the bottom line is this: we all have to bond together to figure out a path forward and how we can do this effectively. And again, the national security aspects of the London Center, my personal experience, we are all resources we'd like to work with you all to use to be effective in going out and, again, making visible that which is invisible right now, but something we all must pick up and fight. So thank you again for allowing me the time to speak to you all today.
Oh, you're a big, powerful voice for us, Tony. We love having you join us on our conference. And you pointed out to something that was very significant too, because when people go to our site at voicesagainsttrafficking.com or get the book of Voices Against Trafficking, they'll see some of those international voices like Alma Tucker and Rosie Orozco and others from around the world that are participating, particularly in Mexico. But today, we're very delighted that NTD and the Epoch Times is streaming us all over the world. So we're trying to expand the big voices that are supporting us in this fight to end human trafficking. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank
And
you for
another international voice joining us, Jay Heisler, who is a Canada reporter for The Voice of America. He's really accomplished. Jay is a policy research associate at the Policy Insights Forum, and he teaches a mental health advocacy course to undergraduate art students at NSCAD University and to continuing education students at Dalhousie University, where he teaches a course in the police leadership program. Here's Jay Heisler.
Welcome to my lecture about math studies and neurodiversity studies. A little about my background first. I'm a Voice of America correspondent for Canada, and I'm a policy research associate at Policy Insights Forum, an Ottawa-based think tank, and I teach math studies at Dalhousie University and at NSCAD University. Math studies was founded in Canada as an equivalent field to Indigenous studies, women's studies, African American studies, any kind of post-colonial studies, gender studies. It's that for people with a mental health history. It's basically the study of people with a mental health history and their rights and freedoms, people who are neurodivergent and people covered by neurodiversity and their rights and freedoms and their ability to advocate for their rights in the workplace, in social life, in the community. And it's growing popular in critical theory, but don't get your guard up. It's also very pragmatic, as we'll see, for training police and training military, both in dealing with the public, but also with their own PTSD-related policy issues. And so it's definitely an exciting new field, and it's both on the front lines of theory, but it's also on the front lines of training and pragmatic training for people who are practitioners in many different medical and national security fields. In this context, the term MAD is not actually an acronym, but it is a taking it back term for the so-called mentally ill. MAD studies is a bit radical and sees mental illness as a label that it doesn't entirely agree with. Instead, it's more about people who are deemed mentally ill by psychiatry. Math studies as a radical politics field does get critical of psychiatry, but it also encourages you to be open about having a psychiatrist, about taking your medication, and to combat stigma. It's more about your rights if, for example, at that point your psychiatrist fails you or you're off your medication, and to advocate that you still have rights in that scenario. It's basically the rights of you to not be pill shamed, to not be met with stigma for having a mental health history. Math studies ideas are starting to gain root in popular culture. One of the most famous examples of a MAD identifying individual, a MAD self-identifying individual, is the CIA recruitment ad that went viral in social media and in conservative media for being a little oversensitive and a little overly politically correct, because the woman in the CIA recruitment ad said she had anxiety. But I would argue they got it wrong this time, because this was an important step for us to be able to talk about mental health openly, and it was an example of positive progress towards that, and really something that I think in a generation or so we'll look back on as no big deal. Really, the core goal of MAD studies is to make sure that the falsehoods that basically permeated our culture about mental health and things like violence and crime are completely upended. For example, in the literature I give my students, it's in academic journal articles that are peer-reviewed, that only 4% of violence, 4% of interpersonal violence, is caused directly by mental illness. So it seems that that completely changes everything everyone thinks they know about personal safety, about violent crime. And so it's about destigmatizing what it's like to have a mental health history. Many people who have mental health history are victims of abuse, survivors of trafficking, survivors of childhood abuse, and so this is an opportunity for them to be able to lobby on behalf of their rights and on behalf of the challenges that they have in the workplace and the challenges they have in their day-to-day lives. free of stigma, without discussing their backgrounds necessarily, in a safe environment. And so it's an exciting new field that allows a lot of people who had really tough lives, and who found it a major challenge to regain some normalcy, to be able to lobby on behalf of their lives and on behalf of their careers, and to be able to create a cultural and political space where they're able to discuss their issues and able to advocate on behalf of what they need to contribute positively to a workforce. And as my art students show, they often contribute the most positively and can be the most creative and can have the most exciting art, and could probably be the best hire for an employer. Meanwhile, my police leadership and military students definitely show that this is important for PTSD policy and uniform. It's a way to examine PTSD policy and uniform, and not just the people in the public you interact with. Many folk in uniform in Canada and the US have said PTSD policy needs reform, it needs change. This is an exciting opportunity to be on the front lines of that, and to really be a reformer in your field, and to make your work environment a better one for everybody, really, and to make it no longer a place where you're afraid to talk about the challenges you face as somebody with PTSD.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Jay Heisler. Spent a little time with the Voice of America myself. Good work, and we appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. And also, we want to make sure that you know about our next guest, because what I find so wonderful, and a lot of our Voices team find wonderful as well, is a lot of former military are involved in trying to help the victims. Retired Sergeant First Class Randy Perham is, a matter of fact, one of America's finest. He served in the U.S. Army. He spent 3 years at NATO in Naples, Italy. And Randy says it is there that he saw firsthand the business of human trafficking. He's married with a blended family. And Randy is the host of Now Equipped with Wisdom on TECN TV. And he is also a candidate. Yep, he's a candidate for the House of Representatives for the great state of Alaska. And Sarge, we're anxious to hear what you have to say.
Good afternoon, Lakita. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today, and crazy technology today. But yes, I spent a lot of time seeing a lot of trafficking going on in Italy, coming out of West Africa and East Africa. As the boats would pull into the Bay of Naples dock there, and they'll just unload, and they're scattered through the four winds. And it was a sad and unfortunate scene to see that almost like every month. And then you're driving around town, and next thing you see some of the females, they're standing off in the alleyways and what have you. And one of our commanders, he got in trouble for this, but he had a conversation with one of them, and they told him that as part of their way to get become a citizen, in a sense, they had to go through and turn in their passports and or whatever documentation they had, and work the streets and pay their sponsor, and then they'll get their paperwork back, and they can go through the citizenship process in Italy. But a lot of times it never comes to fruition. They end up either getting deported or end up, somewhere else, and the cycle continues all over again. It's quite similar things that happen in Alaska, even currently, going back and forth between Alaska and Texas. I see the trafficking that goes on between the two states there, and it's unfortunate, as the previous speaker said, these things happen underneath our noses, and a lot of times, people turn a blind eye, or they're just not aware of, the circumstances behind these things that are going on. But it's very, very common, and it goes on daily. And, one of the things that I've been fighting for and advocating is that, we have a government that is a lot of times complicit in a lot of these things. And that when I become a member of Congress, that's one of the things that I'm going to hold account to these to the government and to the employees is, fighting against, the trafficking of humans, both in the United States and across the world.
Randy, that is just an awesome opportunity for all of us. We hope you're successful in that. You've been so great in everything you've done and the past and what you're doing right now. So go Sarge and go Army. We thank you for that. We're delighted to introduce. Oh, really, it's our honor. We're really proud to introduce you to our friend Kathy Hatter. Her quote started the show today. She's a founding charter member of Voices Against Trafficking and the great director of communications for Enough is Enough. Their mission is to make the internet safer for children and families. And since 1995, Kathy has been a passionate child safety advocate. She's devoted her career to combating child exploitation, sex trafficking, and internet threats impacting children. Kathy's going to tell us about the Earn It Act and what it means to us as we continue this fight to stop evil predators from targeting our innocent children. And Kathy, we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thanks so much, Blanquita, and thank you again to Voices for having me today. As you said, I'm just going to take a few moments to share about the Earn It Act, what it is, why it's needed, and how you can help advocate for the safety of children on the internet. The Earn It Act, or the Eliminating Abusive and Rampant Neglect of Interactive Technologies Act, it's a mouthful, is one of the strongest pieces of bipartisan legislation to confront the explosion of online child sexual abuse material known as CSAM. If passed, Earn It will remove immunity for social media and technology companies that knowingly facilitate or profit from the distribution of CSAM, which visually depicts the sexual abuse and exploitation of children. Now, this is not a victimless crime. These images and videos document victims' exploitation and abuse. And when these files are shared across the internet, victims suffer re-victimization each time the image of their sexual abuse is viewed. Now, CSAM also drives demand for new material, which can only be met by the further abuse of children. Now, keep in mind, these images may often represent children who have been abducted, trafficked, or even turned over by a parent to an abuser for money. So in regard to the scope of this issue, in 2021, there were 29.3 million reports of CSAM made to the cyber tip line at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. This is the highest number of reports ever received in 1 year. A recent report by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection shared that 78% of images and videos analyzed of child online sexual exploitation depicted children under 12 years old. 63% of those children were younger than 8 years old. Now, we've been told by law enforcement that law enforcement is so overwhelmed by CSAM that departments are only able to focus on sexual assaults against infants, toddlers, young children over the older children. Sadly, the reports of online sexual exploitation snowballed during the COVID pandemic when school closures resulted in children spending more time online than ever for virtual learning and to interact. And as we know, predators prey where children play. So why is this heinous crime against humanity so prevalent? Instead of digital platforms scanning and eliminating CSAM, which can easily be done, they simply ignore it. Why? Well, courts have interpreted the Communications Decency Act of 1996, Section 230, as giving tech companies immunity. So there's really no incentive for them to delete it. Profit-hungry interactive tech companies misuse and abuse this legal protection. They use it as a loophole to avoid accountability and responsibility. The Earn It Act just clarifies the congressional intent that big tech should not facilitate criminality on its platforms. We must hold accountable the multi-billion-dollar child pornography, human trafficking, and child exploitation industry, including big tech companies that facilitate this atrocious behavior. If passed, Earn It will update federal statutes to use the term child sexual abuse material instead of child pornography, which grossly fails to describe the true nature of the crime. The EARN will also establish a commission of survivors, technology representatives, and government stakeholders to create recommendations and voluntary best practices for tech companies. So how can you help? Well, let me start by saying the tech companies right now are spending tens of millions of dollars to fight against this common sense proposal. So we really do need your help. We urge you to contact Congress, both senators and U.S. representatives, to ask them to co-sponsor 2 identical bills, and I'll share them with you now. In the Senate, it's S 3538, and in the House, it's H.R. 6544. Now, last month, the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously voted to pass the EARN It Act out of committee and on to a full vote in the Senate. I had the pleasure of speaking on behalf of Enough is Enough at a press conference, joining EARN It co-sponsors Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Richard Blumenthal, along with other advocates, just moments after that vote was announced. The EARN It Act has tremendous bipartisan support, but we really need you to help bring it across the finish line. The bottom line, big tech must become part of the solution, not part of the problem. They need to earn immunity by demonstrating accountability and responsibility as set forth by this legislation. Please join Enough is Enough and other advocates and survivors who are calling for the protection and safety of the most vulnerable among us, our children. Make your voice heard. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Oh, Kathy, that's powerful information and so inspiring to know that it is totally bipartisan. And again, remember, folks, sometimes it's kind of hard to reach these members of the Senate. Call your House representatives. They've got an office at home as well as in the nation's capital. And if they get over 100 phone calls, that's the old story. They're going to know how important it is. Let's work together to make this happen, because it is not the issue of right versus left. It is the issue of right versus wrong. And we're trying to stop the victims, which are our children. Thank you, Kathy Heidemann. Always we appreciate Enough is Enough. And the interesting thing about advocacy, there's not an age limit with advocacy. You don't have to be a certain age to be able to begin to fight for human rights. And we're very excited because we have someone that you're going to be inspired about, and you're going to need to meet him, Wiley L. Wiley is an up-and-coming leader in the fight against human trafficking. He's got courage and commitment that started early for him. He's 14 years old, a high school student with a young perspective on human trafficking, and his efforts are working, and they're focused on stopping trafficking in his community and to create awareness among teens. He's dedicated to doing more, and as I say to you, we are very proud to introduce him to you, an inspiration to all of us. We're the graybeards. He's the young one. Wiley, welcome, and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you so much. I have some notes that I'm just going to read, and I hope it. Hi, my name is Wiley. I'm 14 years old. I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Vaughn and learn from Andy about the importance as a teen of being aware of the ugliness and stain of human trafficking in our society. Trafficking is usually one of the last things on kids' and teens' minds. While we don't need to live in fear, a lack of awareness increases the likelihood of becoming a victim. From reading Andy Berger's book, Voices Against Trafficking, talking to my friends, and my own experiences, I have learned that social media and the internet are the biggest threats to kids, teens, and young adults. Trafficking predators use apps and websites to lure in unsuspecting victims. Oftentimes, predators disguise their identity as other young people. It is common for kids as young as 10 years old to be exposed to inappropriate images by a predator. In my home, my parents have strict internet rules that keep us safe from these threats. For instance, my brothers and I share a phone that has no internet connection or apps. I do have an Instagram account, but I only access it on my mom's phone with her supervision, so there are no unwanted or unapproved conversations. Another way my parents help to protect our innocence is we don't play games with pop-up ads. There are a lot of things in our culture that are designed to groom and influence children to become victims. We are very conscientious with the music, TV, and movies we expose ourselves to. The We only use the computer in public places such as the kitchen, so my parents can easily monitor what we're looking at. Another strategy we implement is always sticking together. Whenever I'm out in public or crowded areas with my family or friends, I make sure to not go on my own to any isolated areas. It is very important in a group environment to always be aware of your surroundings. This is helpful because if you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you know where the quickest and easiest escape route is. My brothers and I are also involved in several different self-defense and weapon defense classes. According to Andy's book, body language is about how you carry yourself. Having an awareness of how you move and act in public is just as important as recognizing potential threats around you. My training in jiu-jitsu increases my situational awareness as well as confidence in defending myself. Whenever I'm out in public, I try to be sensitive and aware of any potential victims. Some signs of traffic victims are timidity and submissiveness, as well as having someone monitor their conversations at all times. If I'm concerned for someone, I would call the trafficking hotline 1-888-373-7888. Speaking as a teen, and I know this isn't a popular opinion, I would encourage parents to be more involved for their kids' internet use and be aware of the people and things that are influencing their children. Thank you for listening.
Well, Wiley, that was just amazing. I wish every teenager was as prepared and as knowledgeable as you, but we sure hope that they're going to read Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking as one as well, because as you so aptly stated, very, very adult-like, there is a lot of information, a lot of things that we can learn to do for ourselves and to protect our kids. So thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you representing the youth of America.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alrighty, well, some of you are probably wondering, well, what else can we do, or what else does Voices do? And so I'm Andy Berger, I'm founder and chair, and I'm going to give you a few ideas of how you can help, and then we're going to continue on with our program. We have a lot of excitement coming up. So one of the things is, yes, we mentioned our book, Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One, because together we are stronger. It is available on Amazon.com, and it helps fund the things that we do, like this forum. There are production costs, and we have books to get out. In fact, our goal this year is to get one book to every Congress member, every member of Congress, every Attorney General, and every governor in the United States. So far, we have quite a few sponsored, and our goal is to make sure that no one ever has a reason to say, I didn't know, or I wasn't sure, or how can this be happening? So every year we hope to bring out an edition that our leaders, because they're the ones that help make the laws that either protect or don't protect our children. And really, the youth is our future for this country and all our countries that are engaged with our efforts. So one of the things you can do is certainly buy a book for yourself, for your own home library, or for someone else's library as well. Well, one of the other things that we do is, of course, we have these forums. Each quarter, we try to present fresh voices from around the world with new information, with ideas, with stories, things to that will educate, create greater awareness, and inspire action. Because without action, all the education in the world falls short. So that's another thing. And of course, a very super simple thing you can do is go to our voicesagainsttrafficking.com website. There you will find hotlines like Wiley was talking about, and helplines. Suicide prevention, if you suspect trafficking or you're a victim, there are helplines and hotlines on that site that you can put into your phone right now, today. And that's one way to be prepared. And also for children that are old enough to understand what those numbers are for, make sure that they have them in their phone as well. Kathy Haddam was speaking about the Earn It Act, and recently we just heard about California trying to get a bill passed, SB 1042. SB 1042 in California. There's a public safety hearing on this bill on April 5th, so if you are in California watching today or listening, we want you to be aware that you can be part of a solution to make human trafficking a violent felony, because right now it's not considered a violent felony. And for those of us who have been victimized, like myself, I can assure you it's definitely a violent felony. So let's make that state greater by getting this bill passed. Again, SB 1042 in California. One of our goals is to keep you posted on the things that are happening around the country. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to our phenomenal moderator, Ms. BQ, because she has some exciting news to share with us and a very exciting guest, and we're going to continue our program. So hang tight.
Well, you're right about that, Andy. We have a great coming up guest because he's not only a powerful voice, and I'm talking about a very powerful voice. I'm talking about the great Jim Bohannon. Now, many of you listen to Jim Bohannon on the radio. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy because he's going to receive a special award from us that we consider our most precious award, and that's the Voices of Courage Award. Jim Bohannon, this legend, wrote a profound chapter in our book, Voices Against Trafficking. And let me tell you what a magnificent guy he is. He's been in broadcasting 50 plus years. He's a veteran, literally. He spent years in the Army and Vietnam, and his career began in Lebanon, Missouri. His talent propelled him to the Mutual Broadcasting Corporation, where he eventually served as the principal backup to the famous Larry King. And when Larry King took off in 1993 and went on to television, well, guess who took over? The great Jim Bohannon. He took over that prestigious nighttime talk show, and he never let go. In fact, now the Jim Bohannon Show on Westwood One is nationally syndicated on over 300 stations nationwide. It's on the radio Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. And his incredible talent has been honored so many times. Let me just share a little bit about his great awards and his respect he's gotten for his, not only his ability on the mic, but for what he does off the mic. He's an inductee into the National Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame 2022, the National Radio Hall of Fame, the State of Missouri Hall of Fame. Talkers Magazine, which is the industry magazine, has listed him more times than I can tell you on the Talkers 100. Frankly, the Talkers 10. And he was also given by that editorial board the 2013 recipient of the publication's prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. We know him for his dedication to human rights and ending 21st century slavery, affecting so many innocent victims. And I got to tell you, when we first approached him and his wonderful wife, Annabelle, we asked them to become charter members. They didn't think twice about it. I mean, they didn't think a second about it. And Jim has been one of the leading promoters of trying to fight for the rights of innocent victims. So, of course, with that incredible respect, it is our honor to present the Voices of Courage Award to Jim Bohannon, the champion of human rights. And Jimbo, for those people that can't see the award, I want to read to them what it says because it is in recognition for your extraordinary efforts. And that it is extraordinary to bring an end to human trafficking and to provide its victims with help, healing, and hope. And we are just tremendously excited to give this Voices of Courage Award to you, so well deserving, the wonderful Jim Bohannon.
Thank you very, very much, Blanquita. And by the way, I believe everybody can see the award now. There it is.
Gorgeous.
There it is. It is very humbling. I must confess that I don't think of anything I've done as necessarily showing courage, nor do I feel that the principal enemy here really is cowardice. I think that the main problem here would be apathy. Various apathies. There's the apathy of priorities. Human trafficking, yeah, that's a bad thing. Good luck with that. But right now, really, we're mostly concerned about paying for Billy's braces. How do I fit in bridge club and picking up Susie from soccer practice? I have other things to worry about. But good luck with that human trafficking thing. I think a lot of people are like that. There's the apathy of events. Yeah, human trafficking. Well, go get them. That's a bad thing. We ought to get rid of that. But have you seen the headlines? I mean, there's a war in Ukraine. Could spread. I mean, the pandemic, is that ever going to go away? Prices, groceries, gasoline. But human trafficking, yeah, you work on that. There are 1,000 excuses. The fact is, of course, that as human beings, we really are capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. What people are really saying here, I think, is this. Get off my back. My plate is full. Okay, I've got all kinds of other things to worry about. And human trafficking, well, of course, that's bad. But number one, it doesn't affect me. And number two, even if it did, there's nothing I can do about it. Wrong and wrong. Number one, it does affect you more than you might think. There are various misconceptions here. Thank goodness this doesn't happen in the good old USA. Oh, yes, it does. And not just in the USA, not just in poorer areas, but in every state, in counties and towns, and yes, even rural areas all across the country. Well, okay, thank goodness it doesn't happen to Americans. It happens to those foreigners. Matter of fact, it happens to people of every nationality, every ethnic background. Well, at least thank goodness it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. Are you sure? Well, yes, of course I'm sure it's a great neighborhood. Well, it may be a great neighborhood in which you live, but that doesn't make it a perfect neighborhood. If you've lived any length of time at all, I think the odds are pretty good that you know or have at least met a victim of human trafficking. You may not know that they are a victim, but you've met them or you've come in contact with them. The fact is, it happens all the time, all over the place. Well, at least it doesn't extend beyond sex trafficking. Yeah, actually it does. In various forms of employment, for example, forced labor occurs in sweatshops and domestic service, massage parlors, and you name it. Well, you might say, gee, individuals have to be forced into commercial sex for that to be a crime. No, actually, under federal law, if in fact you are under the age of 18 and you are induced into this, that in and of itself is a crime. Well, okay, all right, so it's around there. That's a bad thing, but nothing I can do about it. Well, stop and think about the things that you're concerned about. Okay, you got to worry about Billy's braces and bridge club and Susie's soccer practice. I'll grant you that. But what can you really do about the war in Ukraine? Really? What can you really do about the pandemic besides keeping yourself and your family safe? What can you do about inflation other than trying to pinch pennies and cut corners as best you can? The fact is, there are things you can do about human trafficking. You can look for warning signs, for example. Maybe you know someone who has suddenly begun to appear withdrawn. They're not engaged with others. They're not involved in church or attending school, perhaps. Maybe they show signs of bruises frequently. Hard to explain bruises, this sort of thing. These are things that, in fact, you can do something about. You can do it by a simple phone call. That I mentioned that the hotline that we heard just a moment ago, 1-888-373-7888. I'm going to repeat that slowly because I want you to write it down. It might be important to have to pass along to somebody that you suspect may be a victim. The victims of human trafficking don't all run forward and say, I'm a victim of human trafficking. In many cases, they may be ashamed, even though it's probably not their fault at all. In many cases, they just feel like that they've had their sense of privacy and dignity ripped apart enough. They don't want to get involved with anybody or anything. This hotline can offer help. And that's something these people need desperately. The number again, toll free, 1-888-373-7888. Write it down. Keep it handy. Have it available that you might be able to pass it along to somebody. And in fact, you might be able to save a human life. So those to me are the main issues. I have tried to, in fact, bring word about this terrible problem to a lot of people. And I do have a bully pulpit, if you will, a platform to do so. I don't know that I would consider myself a voice of courage, but I'm certainly a voice of interest. I'm a voice of concern, and we should all be just that as well. So again, thank you for this award, the Voices of Courage Award, and I'll try to live up to that. Thank you, Andy, Blanquita. Thank you very much.
Jimbo, you are a voice of courage. And I'll tell you why. Because you didn't hesitate to take the bully pulpit and use it to help. Not everyone does that. And to your point, we don't have a lot of canons in our business of broadcasting and journalism. We do have one, and that is to seek the truth and report it. And I think a lot of people will say, well, we don't have a situation like we did back in 1865. We don't have slavery. Well, what is this human trafficking? Taking people's dignity and their rights and their self-determination away, regardless of their sex or their preference or their religion. It's slavery. And where I think you have been courageous and you've encouraged others in our industry not to be wimps, because there are a lot of other things they can talk about. Yeah, we all are concerned about what's going on in Ukraine, Jimbo, but to your point, if we look at anything that's going on, the neighborhoods right now because of COVID, people may have been isolated, but it didn't stop people from trafficking and taking victims who didn't even have any recourse at all because there were so many restrictions in trying to reach out. The idea, as you say, to mention these hotlines, it's critical. And it's important for those of us that do have a bully pulpit to say, look, if you don't believe in slavery, if you don't want victims, if you believe people have human rights, then for crying out loud, get out there, speak up and make a difference. And Jimbo Hanna, we are so proud of you.
Well, thank you, Blanquita. It's an important thing to do. It does matter. And as I noted, not only does it affect all of us to one extent or another, but there are things we can do about it. A lot of the problems that we face, you do the best you can, you adjust, you adapt. This is one you can actually take on. And that's important. So we'll continue. In fact, we'll be having Andy Berger back on my show periodically to talk about this, simply because not enough people know about it. The sad part of some of the things I just said was about the things that get the headline coverage. And certainly you can't ignore the pandemic or the war in Ukraine or the inflation that's affecting our pocketbooks. But you also need to pay attention to other things. And there are many things out there that are vitally important that just don't get the headline coverage. I'm not sure quite why, but they haven't. And human trafficking is one of them. And this deserves to be talked about. It deserves to be understood. And again, everyone should spread the word. We're not trying to spread here paranoia. Every person is a human trafficker. Every person is an evil individual. We're not trying to tell every child that every stranger is automatically going to hurt you, but they might. We try to teach common sense, prudent rules of behavior. That's all. And so I hope that the message does get out.
Well, to your point, Jimbo, a lot of it, we don't want to make people just go crazy, but we want to engage with people and have them become smarter and be aware of what's happening with their kids. If their kids are being groomed, they're being sent messages. A lot of kids will have someone their own age that would be trying to act as if they're their friend, and then they recruit them to become part of some gang and we've heard that story countless times. What you said about the difficulties and what's been so important about Andy's work is that every child, every victim suffers from PTSD. In many cases, they end up on drugs. They go back to a lifestyle that they try to escape from because they're, like, to your point, either ashamed, they don't know where to go, and who to reach out to. And that's why Voices Against Trafficking basically was formed, to try to get many people from different walks of life, different perspectives. We really don't care their religion, their gender, or whatever, to join with us in an effort to try to be able to provide resources and a place to be able to support these victims. Your pulpit is very significant. I know Andy is going to want to get back on it again, Jimbo, because when you're reaching out to over 300 stations, that's very significant. Andy, I know you're there, and we're going to bring you back on here to join in this conversation.
Absolutely. I am so proud of you, Jim, and you are one of my heroes because as a victim of human trafficking, there was no voice all those years ago. So I want to thank you, and I'm so excited that you got to share this with us, and you are a voice of courage. And so just, we're not going to take anything else except yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it is. Thank you, Andy.
Okay. And we know that April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, so I want to be one of the first to thank you for running our public service announcements on your show for the entire month of April, because we want people to have tips. We want them to have reminders on how to protect and take care of our children and prevent child abuse, because we know many children who are abused end up either in bad situations like human trafficking, stings, or not stings, but human trafficking rings and other things that are not good for them. So thank you again for being that forerunner in the media for us. You've been a long-time ally, and you've got my admiration. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And we will be in touch since April is Friday, for Pete's sake, how time flies. And again, that is, of course, Child Abuse Awareness Month. So for all of you, Andy Berger will be back on the Jim Bohannon Talk Show in the month of April, and we're looking forward to her return.
Fantastic. All right. Well, God bless you, Jim.
God bless you.
All right, so we have some more excitement coming up, but right now I would be remiss if I didn't share a few other things about Child Abuse Prevention Month. If you need numbers or you need information on how to help, go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com, and also our book, Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One, just like we've been doing all program today. That will be a great start, something to have in your school library, in your church library, in your home library. It helps us keep programs going. It helps us intercede. For example, Voices Against Trafficking, we don't publicize this, but we were actually able to intercede in 2 active trafficking situations, one in Georgia and one in Oregon. And thankfully, we got the FBI, we got Homeland Security, because our members knew what to look for. They were on it. Some even got pictures. Some even got the flight number of the man that was trying to take an infant. So together we do great work as a community, whether it's a local community, a national community, or an international community. Together we are stronger. So be part of our voices. Go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com, click on join. All you have to do is say, hey, add my voice. I want to add my voice to your roster as someone who wants to be part of the solution. Don't have to do anything. It doesn't cost you anything. It just gives us a name that we can put on our roster, because our hope is to get 1 million names by the end of summer 2023. That 1 million names is going to go to a lot of legislators and people who say they want change, people who say they'll protect our children, and we're going to have a little more influence with all those names. So we hope you do that. We hope you join us. I wanted to share just a little bit about why Voices Against Trafficking came into being. There was a moment where I heard this voice that said, more voices, Andy. Your voice is one voice and it does a good job, but you need more voices because it'll be powerful. And that's what I call a God nudge. In the middle of the night, couldn't shake it, had to get up and call BQ in DC and say, I don't know what this is, but we need more voices. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And because of great people like Representative Pete Olson and Congressman Jim Costa and a whole lot of other members of Congress from both sides, we began in 2019 with an event on Capitol Hill. And we gathered 200 people, different organizations from Mexico, from the US, from all over. And we decided and declared that we were going to be more active and do more things. So Voices Against Trafficking became a nonprofit. And everything we do is to help you and to help the future of all our countries, which are our children. Protect them and keep them safe. Every human has the right to be safe, to be loved, but a lot of times our children don't know that they have those rights and that they are going to be protected, because we need to do a better job. So one of the things...
Andy, I wanted to mention something because Jimbo was so smart and giving the phone numbers, and we'll be giving them again before we leave, but I think it would be important for folks to write down this great number that if you have any suspicions that a young person is being trafficked, you might go to the Homeland Security number, which is an 866 number, 347-2423, 866-347-2423. And you were talking about our airline ambassadors that are the charter members that have been very successful in helping to get the industry to help to determine whether some young person is being trafficked and not with their parents. We also have, one more time, is the National Child Abuse Hotline, the 800 number 422-4453, 422-4453.
That's great. Thank you again, BQ, for that. We can't say that enough times. And again, voicesagainsttrafficking.com, all the numbers, all the hotlines, suicide prevention, all of that is on that website. I do want to tell just a brief backstory. I have been a victim for 17 years of child sex trafficking before there ever was a term, from ages 6 months to 17 years old. And I would have had a different life if somebody would have spoken up. It wasn't until decades later where I ran into some adults who said, well, we thought something was going on, or, you know, it seemed like, you know, your birth mother was kind of off, or, you know, we had no idea. But we were afraid to say something. We didn't want to embarrass you or cause any more problems. I'm here to tell you, please do that. If you suspect, if you think something is happening, it is better for you to suffer a tiny bit of embarrassment if you're wrong than to let a child go and continue to be hurt, abused, and possibly killed in the process. We know that child abuse kills 5 children a day on average in the U.S., so we want to really make a push to get that number turned around. And again, even though I've been a survivor, a lot of survivors need support. They need help. Like BQ said, PTSD is prevalent in everyone who's been victimized, even one time. It's a life sentence. So we just want to re-encourage you all to be part of the solution. And now for the grand finale of our program, I am so excited to talk about another hero of mine, someone who's been an ally and a great friend of Voices Against Trafficking since it began. We are so grateful to have Congressman Jim Costa from California representing the 16th District with us. He has been serving the San Joaquin Valley since 2005 in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he has been on a lot of committees and different caucuses. I don't want to blow his background, so I'm going to read a little bit of it to you, because Congressman Costa is a friend to victims. He's a friend to those who suffer, the families that suffer with the victims, and he's been a great friend to us. And he is our second recipient of the Voices of Courage Award. And we couldn't be more thrilled to honor him today. And he's going to be with us in just a moment. Congressman Costa was raised on a dairy farm in Fresno's Kearney Park area. He is a third-generation family farmer. You don't hear that very often. As a member of Congress, Congressman Costa has applied his farming background to fighting the valley water, agriculture, and the economy, fighting for them. But he also fights for human rights. Huge advocate. Along with his committee assignments, Congressman Costa serves as a leader of the following groups. He is the co-chairman of the Congressional Crime Survivors and Justice Caucus, which elevates the voices of crime victims and survivors within the U.S. Congress in a bipartisan manner. Voices Against Trafficking is completely bipartisan. We love Congressman Costa because he, like us, is focused on the human issues. That caucus focuses on the importance of listening to crime survivors and those who serve them so that they can guide congressional actions and improve services and rights for all crime victims. Congressman Costa has been a champion for Voices Against Trafficking from the very beginning, and he is a hero to many. As a survivor, advocate, and originally a California girl, it is my honor as founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking to award our prestigious Voices of Courage Award to friend and ally, Congressman Jim Costa from California. And I think we have him.
My name is John Lynch. I'm with Congressman Costa's staff. Apologies for the impromptu surprise here. I believe the congressman is trying to join right now. The House of Representatives is actually in the middle of a series of votes. So as you know, is the job of our representatives. He's voting, and he is trying to get off the floor here and join shortly. But we appreciate the introduction. I know he's very appreciative of this award and the recognition that it bestows and the work of Voices Against Trafficking. I will cede the floor back to the host for the time being, and we'll keep everybody in the loop, and as soon as the congressman is able to join. Thanks so much, and I appreciate your patience.
He's doing his job. He's working, right? He's out there
Yes,
voting. But
absolutely.
You know what he also did, and this is what, Andy, you were talking about so much, and I really appreciated it, because when we formed this idea, and we were going to try to have a meeting on the Hill, I had a very longtime friend with the former Congressman Pete Olson from Houston, the Sugar Land area, actually. And I said, Congressman, we want to make sure that this is bipartisan. We don't want to have somebody saying it's right versus left. And Pete said, let me pick up the phone and call Jim Costa. He's on the Human Rights Committee with me. And I'm telling you, it was not even 5 seconds later that the congressman from California, Jim Costa, said, absolutely, count me in. And this has been at a time when Washington, D.C., I'm telling you, it's never been like this before, where the sides are so divided and they won't work together on anything. So the idea that you get Congressman Jim Costa and Pete Olson, two different sides of the aisle, well, they've been absolutely spectacular.
They have. And I think to your point, it goes to the fact that it is a human issue. It doesn't have race. It doesn't have politics. The victims don't even vote. They're just trying to survive, So you're right. It's amazing to have both sides of the aisle represented. And we are hoping that we will have more Congress people join us, more members of Congress, more legislators, more governors, more attorney generals, because the only reason we have more victims is because we have predators that are not being held accountable.
Jim joining via phone.
Awesome.
And I think we've got him on the phone, Andy.
We do.
Well, come on here. We'll take him any way we can get him, because he's such a hero to us. Although I have to say that maybe we can use this leverage for him to get more members to support us here on Voices Against Trafficking. We'll have more members of Congress next time.
Absolutely. Amen.
Costa, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I apologize in advance. We're in between votes. So I've got 5 minutes here, but I can come back after I vote this next time. We're in a series of votes on the floor. And so I'm out on the balcony. I don't know if you can. In this day and age of Zoom, we've all learned to be our own camera people, sorts. But I want to thank all of you, the Voices Against Trafficking Forum that's being sponsored here. All of you make a big difference, and I can't thank you enough. It was very kind of you to recognize me earlier this year, and but the fact is that that award is really a reflection of all of your work. We're a team, and we can't do this by ourselves. As the co-chair of the Victim Survivors Caucus, we know that people that traffic are victims, that are trafficked, I should say, and it knows no boundaries in terms of our communities throughout our country, sadly, and all of us understand the challenges that we face in our communities and why the efforts against trafficking are so important at every level. And so obviously the Crime Survivors and Justice Caucus wants to elevate your voices as we try to, sorry, I'm having trouble balancing things, and there's a siren in the background.
You're still sounding great, Congressman.
Keep
so
going.
We're happy. We're happy to have you.
Just want to give a shout out to all of your hard work, the advocacy that you're engaged in. And obviously this year, we had to deal with a combination of factors. Still with this pandemic. And it's impacted mental health issues. And all of these things have an impact on trafficking. And it's just not in our country, but sadly, in this horrible, horrific war that Putin has engaged in with the people of Ukraine, we see trafficking taking place on international boundaries. And so it just goes to show how important it is, your advocacy and the work you do. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you.
Well, we sure appreciate it, Congressman. You've been fighting the bells ringing and the sirens going and the wind in your hair. But you know what? That's what we love about you. Now we just expect to see that beautiful award in your office. And we're going to get our gang to go over and check it out. And of course, you know that we take it very seriously that you were one of the very first people that came on board, you and former Congressman Pete Olson. You're good buddies, even though you're from different sides of the aisle, working on behalf of the American people. So
Absolutely.
We know he's dealing with the elements, Andy.
He is. And Congressman, we so appreciate you and your staff for taking those few moments with us, and they can replay the wonderful accolades to you on the video.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. My background here seems to be a bit, I don't know how to adjust this, but I guess I've got some sort of a filter on it, so I blur. And what I was trying to do, there we go.
There you go. Look at that.
Fabulous.
Man, you look 10 pounds younger, 10 pounds thinner, and 10 years younger. How good is that?
He's got that California tan.
Battery works you everywhere, my dear. But see, turn it that way.
Oh, that's great. Now you're making me a little seasick. Yeah. I'm going to take a Rolade on this presentation.
Well, you look very congressional.
I was trying to get the Washington Monument behind us, and I finally succeeded. That is that over my shoulders. So
that's great. That's great. Well, we love you so much for your commitment to the innocents, to the victims, and we couldn't have chosen a better pair of men to honor today, Jim Bohannon and Congressman Jim Costa. So the Jims have it.
Thank you.
The Jims are gems.
And a shout out to Jim as well. I commend him and congratulate all his passion and his hard work as well. But we get it from all of you. You motivate us every day.
Well, thank you.
Well, you know, we'll keep doing that, Congressman. I want you to put your wonderful award in front of all those guys that we're trying to coerce to help us with more advocacy on behalf of the victims. But God bless you. Very, very much appreciated.
Yes, you're our hero. Thank you, Congressman. I know you got to get back to what you need to do. You're working for the people, and we appreciate that. So God bless you.
Well, thank you. I do have to go back and vote, but you've made my day.
Yay!
Hooray for that.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, Jim. Thank you so much. And thank all of you out there, too. I know Andy, we're coming to the end of the show here, and we want to thank our charter media members, our charter Voices Against Trafficking members, and that wonderful special liaison, Eric Karen, and the great producers out there with you, Andy, the Hand in Hand Productions. We also want to spend a special thank you to our dear friends at the Epoch Times and NTD, the television network. They've been streaming this live, and we very much appreciate it. You know, we know that as with a live Zoom production, sometimes it gets a little bit iffy. But the best news is that everyone that has attended really cares about trying to help those victims of human trafficking. Feel free, as Andy has said, to contact us at voicesagainsttrafficking.com. It doesn't take much to become a lifetime member, $50 a person. You can join us at voicesagainsttrafficking.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Voices Against T1. LinkedIn, you'll find us at Voices Against Trafficking. And I want to have us end with a great word that was a quote by Queen Sylvia of Sweden. What she said was to see, but not to see. To see, but to deny. To see, but not to act is a crime against a child. You can all do something. You can make a difference. You can save a child. So on behalf of Andy Berger and all of us at Voices Against Trafficking, we thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm Blanquita Cullum.